African Americans, among other races, have been subject to racism for a long time. Some periods have been worse than others. Up until the Civil War in the U.S., blacks were used as slaves for whites. White people were superior to the black and had no rights. However, this all changed with Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War, and the 13th Amendment. After the Civil War, things were looking up for African Americans. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment extended equal protection of the laws to all citizens, and the 15th Amendment guaranteed that the right to vote could not be denied on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Between 1869 and 1877, voters in the South elected more than 600 African American legislators and 16 members of Congress. However, these new perks were soon taken away from the African Americans. They were again prohibited from voting. However, this time it was done indirectly. Poll taxes were enforced, which made it near impossible for the poor African Americans, and poor whites to be fair, to vote. Literacy tests that could be nearly impossible were used to prevent people of color to vote. In the end, only members of the whites-only Democratic Party could vote. This was to the great joy of white supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan. First founded directly after the Civil War, the group worked to scare and prevent African Americans from voting and being integrated into the society. The Klan was the most ruthless organization of the Jim Crow era, bombing black schools, brutally attacking blacks in the night, and torturing and mutilating them before they were murdered. At least 10% of the black legislators that had been elected during the 1867 and 68 constitutional conventions became victims of violence during Reconstruction. 7 of these were killed. People who sided with blacks and wished to integrate them, like Republicans, were also targets. But why did they hate blacks so much? What had they done to deserve all that hate? The KKK's goal from the beginning has been to restore white supremacy and hindering the blacks from becoming an integrated part of the American society. They did this by recruiting members from the highest levels of government. With members of the KKK as judges and other government officials, it was difficult for blacks to protect themselves against this wave of racism. As time went by, more and more Jim Crow laws were enforced, including the separation of blacks and whites. This separation was justified by the statement, separate but equal. However, in reality, whites had the cleanest bathrooms, the best part of the bus, and the best hospitals, while blacks were left with facilities that were generally older, dirtier, and of worse quality, or in some cases, no facilities designated to them at all. Apparently, the US wasn't ready for equality. This system of separation would last until the 1960s before it finally dissolved. Today, the US has a much less racist and separated society, but there are still some issues that need to be solved. The KKK still exists today, but it is down to around 5,000 members. Hopefully, they don't receive another wave of popularity like they did in the 1920s. One can only hope that people have learned from history, so it doesn't repeat itself.